Hello? Hey, is this working? Is this working? Can you see me?
Yeah, this is
Although I do think it's fitting that our very first conversation from the compound is one of us is in North Carolina, right? Because I know that is one of the locations where we talked about setting up our compound.
Yes, I was thinking about that as well, friend Quinn. That you're at the place where our compound. We've been talking about that compound for years now. Yes. And I think the other ironical or not so ironical thing is that it is Juneteenth, and in Juneteenth, and I'm here in California where we're masking it up everywhere. I forgot and left the house originally without my mask, but we've got rules now that they're going to start enforcing for reals about being out in public. How is it in North Carolina?
You would think there was no virus here. It's intense. Like I can tell you, coming from New York and Long Island, where the numbers there have been so high, people take it very seriously. But here it's different. And I mean, I have to assume in some regard, the numbers just aren't as high in other places. Like if people, if your neighbors aren't getting sick and dying, it doesn't feel very real. And I can imagine why people would be super frustrated, right? So, we had a very different experience where we were so close to New York that it was like, when we shut down because, you could hear sirens. There were like 4 days straight that there were sirens everywhere because there's so many hospitals by us. But I can understand, if you're here in North Carolina, maybe 100, 200 people, but the hospitals are not overrun. You're not seeing videos of doctors and nurses, crying in the hallways, so I guess like if I didn't really feel it happening here and then I was told I had to stay home for 3 months, I'd be kind of pissed. I don't know. I think people just want to you can go by. guest appearance by Ren and Bear in the background.
Bear, Ren used to be my friend.
Oh. Be my friend. Be my friend.
Welcome to my world. This hat has been a great success, by the way. I'm sorry, not. It was interesting to go to the protest march on this past Sunday because this is 2020. We got COVID, we got social unrest, but I mean, before we get into all of that, I mean, how long has it been that we've been friends now? I think
15, at least 15, 16 years.
I think I started Blanca Notice at November of 2004, only because I know that from my resume. So, yeah, 16 years. That's crazy. And,
we've been talking about doing this podcast for 10.
Yeah. And then we're finally doing it. And I mean, like, I'm so glad that we're still friends. Like our friendship, I mean, like who would have thought? Because we're so, we're so different, but we're so the same,
Well, we did DNA tests and you're part Irish. I am part African. So it's very possible that if we went back far enough, right, it's right there.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, you got family in North Carolina. I have family in North and South Carolina, and yeah, my grandfather's last name is Irish, so there you go. Well, I'm sure there's some crossover, but I think earlier you were talking about like the things that how we're so different and similar spiritually, talk about that.
Yeah. So, did I hear some feedback?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I call it like exactly different, which is, I'm white, if you can't tell. and I grew up Christian, and I'm straight, and you are not white, just in case you didn't know, and grew up Muslim and are lesbianic. So it's like if you look at boxes side by side, we don't check a lot of the common boxes. But those are so immaterial to who you are and who I am, which it's kind of like once you peel back that bullshit layer, then it's like we're twinsies.
Yeah, but I don't even think it took a long time for us to peel back that bullshit layer. I think as soon as we met, I definitely you were just in it to win it, and I was just like, whoa.
That's because I love your face. I love your face. I just love your face. I love your energy, and I knew you had that old soul connecting thing, which we can talk about another time. But like, I don't. But you have that whole medium thing. I felt something. I could feel it.
Yeah, and I just moving through the world the way that I have, especially pretty much my entire life. I'm used to having the blockers up a little bit because it's like, who is this person? What do they want? Are they for real? I mean, because at the end of the day, I want to get along with everybody, but we know that that's not entirely possible. So as soon as I was just like, okay, she really is just that way. She just really okay. That's cool, and I think it just took off from there. So and only got deeper when we were deep in it, and after we had to move from the Bay and work for this crazy startup that we will definitely talk about another time and be in the trenches. But
I mean, I guess maybe we should just back up for 2 seconds, because you know me, I get so tactical so early on, and I'm gonna pull a Wadooah and pull us up. But welcome everyone to our podcast. It's something that we've been talking about forever, and it's called Conversations from the Compound. And Wadooah, would you like to talk a little bit about the history of what compound means?
Yes, the compound has been in the making, at least in theory and in thought for several years now. Just thinking about that place where we can go and set up. I mean, because we are family, we're a family of choice, not of blood, and just for when the zombie apocalypse happens,
which we both totally knew was going to happen.
Been planning and prepping for the zombie apocalypse for a while, and so it's like, where can we go to create that safe haven for our people, so that we can be self-sustaining and survive and thrive. And so it's only fitting that since we're still working toward that dream, but this is the embodiment of it for now. That these conversations would be coming from the compound. These would be things that we would be sitting around doing anyway. It's what we've always done. We sit around and break it down.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
welcome to Conversations
from the compound. Yes, from the compound. And Quinn is currently, we already said, in North Carolina. I'm in Los Angeles and California, but normally in New York. But we met in California in the Bay Area 16 years ago. And is that right? I'm bad about. Yeah. And just hit it off in this business of communications, doing our super techie, nerdy PR and things. And yeah, but we found that we had so many other common, and uncommon interests at the same time, which is why I love this woman. And her so I'm super excited. Because we have this is our maiden voyage. So thank you for being in it with us, and whenever you watch it. But today is Juneteenth. Like we were saying, there's so much that has already happened for 2020. I know I've thrown away couple of or put aside the planners that I bought at the beginning of the year, because I thought I was going to start off this year, I was going to be so organized. I had all these different calendar planners, but I think 2020 is definitely about just hitting the Control Alt Delete Reboot on any of that thinking and clearing out, making way for something new. which, as painful as it is, stuff needs to happen. And as painful as, it has been to stay inside and be sheltering in place with my little fur kid, it has brought us all back to basics and this new way of connecting, because I feel like I've had more connecting time with people and reconnecting with people. I would have never thought I would have never had that opportunity had it not been for COVID. So thank you, COVID.
Yeah, I think I think that's why we're doing this, right? Like, again, we've talked about doing this for a long time, and there's just so much happening in the world. I mean, I'm so excited that we're going to do this, because I think I wish for America that we can find places of common ground. And, that's why I thought maybe you and I, with our different backgrounds and being raised different politically, and, trying to understand, not necessarily each other, because I think we do understand each other, but, there's things that are happening in this country that I think people want to understand. They just maybe don't have the context, like they don't have the family member or the friend who can kind of help them break it down. And maybe we can be that.
Absolutely. I mean, and also, show people the way, because it's really not that hard, just to treat people like people. And, I think it's about that willingness to be open and just be human, and giving people a hall pass. I mean, like, we're human. That means we're imperfect, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're not always going to say the right thing. But this is part of the learning, and it's a lifelong thing. I don't think I've learned, I definitely don't know everything, and I'm always open to learning and growing. And so I'm excited to use this platform as an opportunity to not just, be able to maybe talk about things that other people, wouldn't have the opportunity to, because they don't have a family member like my friend Quinn. And also show them that it's not so scary. It's, I've always enjoyed it, and I appreciate all the things that I've been exposed to just through knowing you and doing things with you. And I think the thing about today being Juneteenth, and like, you sent me something earlier about the Tulsa virtual stream, and I told you about Tulsa and the Black Wall Street years ago. We were huddled in an office, and like, in the course of our day, because we had a lot of things going on. Of course, we want to talk about and bring other things that weren't necessarily related to work into the picture. And I had heard about it. I've grown up knowing these things, but I know that it was something that I had to seek out, or that was brought to me by my parents. And so I know it was hard, and I know it was, just being able to tell you that this happened, and me telling you, I want to make a movie about it. I want to tell this story. This story needs to be told, because people don't know the story. But anyway, so what was that like for you when, because, especially now we're feeling a lot of people are hurting, and a lot of people are scared, especially white people. And it's like, oh, I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to see that. And, people want to just quickly move on. But, I think we have to acknowledge our past and see the shit, for what it is.
Oh my God. Did you know what that reminds me of? Remember, I know we're going to get into all the things that we geek out about together, but American Horror Story being one of them, and God bless you, Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk, we love you. But when what's her name's head has to sit there and watch like Roots in its entirety. There are some people that I literally just want to take their head and make them watch stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I think again, I think because this week, or just over the last few weeks, having some of my parents' friends who are wonderful people who've held me so close in the last couple of years since my parents passed away. You know, and they have opinions about what's happening that I think are very much in keeping with that like white fear. You know, a lot of things that I remember hearing when I was young during the riots in LA after the Rodney King trial. And, you know, it's like, you know, just the focus on looting, the focus on things being out of control. And I think this fundamental sense that nothing's really wrong. And so, you know, I think the first thing I say, you know, from one white person to another white person is just listen. Just stop talking about what you think all of this is and listen. And there's a million places you can go now and hear what people have to say, right? Just shut up and listen. And, you know, but I do think there is this kind of safety zone where you can text, you know, these like bullshit things to each other and like these memes and these sayings that kind of keep you in this like soft place of like, well, not everybody's racist and I don't see color. And it's like, psh, 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 just listen. Like, this isn't our time. This is not our time. This isn't our time. This is time for us to step back and for us to listen and say, you know, and if there are things that we put forth, it's ideas, how to help. Because I think listening first, and then I think if we start asking, well, what can I do to help? Yeah, well, you know, white people have been dominating the culture for a long time. I think we know what to do, right? I think we have like really good case studies of what to do. Let's just figure out how do we apply it to people that don't look like us. So I think it's offensive to, you know, say to somebody, what can I do to help? I think what you say is, here, these are some ideas. You know, what do you think? But the first thing I say is, I think you need to listen. I think you need to get educated. And I'll send them links to like, you know, just 13, Selma. You know, I start with like the Hollywood version.
Right.
I don't hit them with like documentaries right away. You know, or even just like there was that really sweet sign of like the little girl who was like, you know, when we said Black Lives Matter, we didn't say only Black Lives Matter. Like, I think that was very palatable for white people because like, oh, look, she's a gentle little Black girl. She's not going to hurt me. You know.
Yeah. But what was it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we were talking about Tulsa.
No, there's so much. And, you know, we will talk a little bit, you know, about, you know, the things that we'll be talking about in this podcast. We keep thinking about things all the time.
I know.
But today we wanted to really focus on the importance of this day and just the current events that were going on. And yeah, so I, you know, like what was it, you know, because I don't think I ever asked you what was, I mean, I know you read about it, learned about it, and then we talked about it, but what was that like for you to like dig into that?
Are you so grossly ignorant?
You know, in your 30s or what? Yeah, all of a sudden have your mind illuminated.
What?
Bombing?
Yeah, I think I was 30. Had never heard of Black Wall Street before. I thought you were joking. I thought you were fucking joking.
Wow.
And you know, that is my white liberal education. You know, I grew up in Santa Monica. I grew up at went to an amazing public school. I went to a Jesuit college. Like, how did this not be a thing? So.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not your fault. I mean, because my parents, you know, were better for work. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But they've always instilled this history, the sense of history, and you know, and so it's always been this anchor to the reality of, you know, what's really lurking beneath the surface of the U.S. and that hasn't made me hate people more. It hasn't, made me angrier. It just has made me keep my eyes open as I'm moving through the world, because it's not as picturesque as, as it's been painted. And I also had a liberal arts education, and in Florida, I mean, it's funny, people outside of Florida are like, that's not the South. I mean, over here, I'm like, oh yes, it is the South. It's totally the South. Like, don't even get me started. I was just in a Zoom the other day with people, and they're like, oh, I was like, oh, you're Atlanta. Oh, I used to be your neighbor, down in Gainesville, in the South. And the person gave me a look, and they weren't originally from Atlanta. So that was the kicker. but it's something that a lot of people, unless you seek out that information, or unless you have people that put that information in front of you, it's that part of history that so many people have wanted to be forgotten. And it's just like, let's just keep putting them out, like covering it up with these things. And now we're at this point where it's like this giant pimple that's bursting. Like, the ick has got to come out. And I was just very thankful that you took the time to learn about it. I mean, like, because, even, I think we were talking about this the other day. I mean, now that when The Watchmen came out, HBO series late last year, and kicked up the whole conversation around the Black Wall Street. And, it kind of bubbled up, but it didn't reach the fervor point that it is today. So I'm glad that, that it's at this point now where there are more people that do know about it, because it is important. And, I talk about Stonewall or other things that have happened in gay rights being, this is our history. It's not just Black history. It's something that happens in the queer communities, and, gay history. It's all of our history. These are the things that have happened in the United States of America.
Yeah.
And, I'm grateful now, because I think, just like with things like Stonewall, that textbooks are going to be rewritten now.
Yes.
To include things like Juneteenth, and to include things like Black Wall Street, and that we'll probably have a federal holiday before the end of the year.
Oh, that was the other thing that I read that I wanted to tell you, because I'm sorry, I don't write anything down. I should have. Tesla gave employees the day off today, but it was not PTO. It was an unpaid holiday. And this reminds me of back in 2006, 2007, when I had a conversation with a media company CEO that I was working for. And I said, hey, we should give everybody MLK Day off, right? Like, it's something that is, picking up speed among tech companies. And I think, we consider ourselves progressive, and, this is something that we should do. And it was a fight. And you know how it ended up? That MLK Day was not a holiday, but an extra vacation day was given to every employee that could be used on that day. How fucked up is that?
And that was just not that many years ago. Yeah. No.
And I remember saying to the, white CEO, that's racist. You're being racist by not doing this. Because, the question was, well, if I don't do it, what could happen? If you don't do it, you'll be considered a racist.
Be on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
That's also a lack of perspective too. I mean, like, speaking of tech CEOs and tech company fails, you were just telling me about Snapchat, which I hadn't seen their seen the new lens that they created especially for this day, where
you smile, you will break the chain behind you. You have to see it. It's like, you can't even imagine how bad it is until you see it. And what's unfortunate is that, granted, I only read the BuzzFeed story, but what I wanted to see in the BuzzFeed story was not just about that filter, but about Snapchat's history of racist filters. They did one for Asian people. They did one on 420 that gave you dark skin. Do you remember that one? Gave you dreads and dark skin.
Yep.
That was awesome. And just, kind of begged at this question of, is there anybody who's not a like white dude that's working at that company? And they even said in their statement, this was awesome because you and I are the people that would be writing these statements. The statement said something along the lines of like, they're like the people who reviewed it were diverse. And I'm like, yeah, because the two Black people in Snapchat were basically like, oh yeah, that looks awesome. You should totally release it, right?
Right. I'm gonna try and can you see my screen, or can you see the Verge story here?
No, I cannot.
Okay, hold on. There, application Chrome tab. There we go. I think, yeah.
But that'd be awesome if you could show it. Oh, yeah, there it is.
Okay, let's see. Oh no. Chains behind you. Yeah, so there we go.
Dude, you and I know what it takes to get features approved on web and mobile platforms, right? Like, what that takes and who has to look at it. And, especially when you're on a really fast dev schedule. And I know things can get sloppy. Again, I don't know anybody at Snapchat, so I have no idea what's going on over there. But Jesus Christ, just really, like, really.
I can't even think of why somebody thought that might be a good thing.
Dude, you smile, bro. You smile, bro, and the chains break, bro. It's a good idea, man.
But also, like, why bring the chains into it? Like, if you're at it, like, let's throw a noose in there too. Like, maybe you want to throw a noose and then, I mean, like, there's so many other things that they could have chosen. I mean, or so many other ways, I should say, that they could have tried to express, come up with a fun filter to celebrate that. But you show me chains, I don't feel festive. I don't feel like smiling. Yeah, it's just like really hurtful. And again, that's why I come back to, where is the human piece of that? Like, I mean, like, I can't even watch the sad, dog abuse or animal abuse commercials, in the cages and so what, I mean, why, anyway, I don't even have words, but sorry.
Well, a couple things I want to shout out. There's an organization that I researched called ColorCom, and it's Women of Color in Communications. I looked at the board, and it's some pretty cool people. I want to say there's like a Warner person there too.
Yep, I've attended some of ColorCom on their list. Yeah.
Yep. So I figured you're on that, and so shout out to them. And then I know I told you about this, but there was a podcast a couple of years ago called Borrowed Interest, which, if you're listening, can you please come back? Because it was a really frank discussion among 3 young women of color in Minneapolis who worked in advertising. And it's interesting because, I listened to that podcast, and then I think Blackish happened, and like he works at kind of an agency type place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, he's written into some of those episodes, just like the incredible insensitivity that goes down in some of those creative conversations. So,
I mean, but it feels like, I watch that show and I love it because, I feel like I've been in those rooms sometimes. I mean,
we gotta talk about the Wadooah. What do Black people think?
Yes. On behalf of I'm speaking, you're asking me to speak on behalf of
my Wadooah, can you please tell us what Black people think about today?
Yes, because we're all the same. We're all have the same perspective and same backgrounds. On behalf of Black people everywhere. Yeah. Too many times. Yeah. I will
say, like, I remember, I want to say maybe it was like Brian or someone, like a nice person who came into our office and asked that question. you know, and you know that they had that good intention. And again, it comes back to, you know, the almost woke white person that's like, I don't see color. The world's a beautiful place. I don't see color.
I will take that guy any day over the guy that's like, let's make a filter and put a chain on a black person. Yeah. I'm like, come into my office, come talk to me any day. Like I said, I will give you a hall pass for being human. I mean, like, because maybe, you know, I see that willingness and that openness to try and learn from and get to know each other. And to me, that's volumes above just like the, all right, you're black. Why don't you just go ahead and tell me? I mean, that you're not listening. You're not even trying to understand. You're just like throwing it away. Like, take it away, black person on the unicycle. Like, juggling the plates. Okay, and bring her back. Okay, now the dancing bear is coming in. Now, I mean, like, that's just it's not real. It's not really trying to connect and getting to know people and get to that place of healing. And before we get away from it, I wanted to give a shout out to you for this hat. I got a lot of props on it at the march on Sunday, and also because I've shared it on social. And so, you know, me being the nerd, I, you know, went and I searched it just so I could share the link to people because they were asking me for it. I didn't know it was attached to a bigger, you know, organization. I mean, trying to rebuild and so a shout out to, I forget the name of it. We can include it in the link.
Yeah.
And so if you want this hat, and that's why I was went back and to my social post and was adding the link. It's like, well, you know, here's the link if you want it. And P.S. it supports a good cause. So not only does it make people, the right people angry or upset or fearful, like my shirt.
Racism isn't over, but I'm over racism.
Yes. That you're also doing some good in the world. So we'll include that in the link.
Awesome. And I'm trying to think of it's the Facebook group for PR professionals. It's not Harrow, it's another one that like we're all in. I think you're in it. Like everybody we know is in it. And
I don't go. We've been at Facebook before.
I suck. Like I don't go on Facebook, but I've been trying to.
I'm saying we opened Facebook, so we've been on Facebook since most other people have been on Facebook.
Yeah. Facebook isn't over, but I'm over Facebook.
Yes, we opened it up. We helped Facebook open the platform beyond.
You did. I didn't do a whole lot. You did.
You were there, though. You were there. You closed them.
But it was I went on Facebook this morning, and there was a post, and I guess in this private group, you know, I have to go back and look, but like I guess some people were asking questions about, you know, how to, I guess as white people, how to be respectful in, you know, pitching and messaging in this time. And I guess some of the questions were not, I think they were probably meant to be sensitive, but could have come across as insensitive. And, you know, and these folks got hammered. Now, I haven't read those, so I'm not sure, but the post that went up this morning was basically like, hey, can we create a safe space where we can educate each other on these kinds of sensitivities? Because, you know, if we all go back into our Wayback Machine when we were young and making mistakes, which we've all done, you know, this really should be a space where we can provide counsel to younger or less experienced people in our field to make them better, right? So I was interested in your thought on that, mainly because it reminded me of when I was, you know, 22, 23, newly arrived to San Francisco, working in PR, and was on a phone call with one of my friends. And I said, dude, that is so gay. And one of my colleagues, and what I meant was like, it was corny.
Right.
Like, dude, you're being so corny. And one of my colleagues who sat in front of me came around and sat me down and was like, hey, please don't, you need to know that what you said was incredibly inappropriate. And I'm telling you this because I don't want you to continue to embarrass yourself.
Wow.
No, like, not like, hey, I'm sorry. I mean, no tiptoeing. It was like, don't keep, you have a choice now, right? So I'm going to tell you that what you're doing is offensive, and what you do from here on out is up to you. But at least when you do say that the next time, you're an asshole.
Right. Right. You've been warned.
But thank God that he did, because I was fucking clueless. So it's interesting to think about, there are these kids that don't know anybody. I mean, I live in Long Island, in a part of Long Island that's predominantly white and wealthy. And these kids think it's okay to say the N-word. They think it's, they just genuinely don't know any better. And then they go to like super white colleges where there's probably like a few people of color in their classrooms, but they're not socializing with them. And they don't know. They're getting out of college and they don't know. So where can they go to get like an education?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tough one, because I mean, I think it's about being open and being, and being able to be reprimanded when they do cross those lines, because I mean, and we can go, the N-word will be just a whole other conversation. I mean, I understand sometimes. I mean, well, there's part of the kids that they hear it in their homes. And so those are, I don't give the hall pass to, because I mean, not the kids themselves. I'm saying that's their family that's passing that on to them, unfortunately. Yeah. But then there's also the kids that are just kids, and, it's such a part of pop culture, and, like with Black
Post Malone does it. Hey, did you know that Post Malone does it? So he's white.
Right.
He says it. So why can't we say it?
And even other Black people that say it to each other. I'm one of those people that I don't think it's ever the right word to use. I'm offended, Black, white, anybody that uses it. It makes me sad. And so, and that's, I mean, it's going back to Blackish. That was a whole episode about like, what is our own relationship to that word? And to me, like being a kid and walking to school in Cincinnati, Ohio with my, I think I was in kindergarten. My older brother was in second grade, and we're walking to school, and, like there's a pickup truck that rolls by, and these guys are throwing bottles at us and and rocks and calling out the N-word. And then, like, again, because of my hard education from my parents about what it means to be Black in America, I just see people being hurt and killed on the other side of that word, and it being used as literally like it's a knee on the neck, and so I don't have the tolerance for it. So again, for the kids to see it, and they're seeing people like Post Malone, or they're seeing Kanye or whoever, and it's being used in this way that's non-derogatory, it makes it very confusing. So that's when it's like, ask somebody, and that's when that's when I'll be like, okay, you can ask me, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to speak on behalf of all Black people everywhere, but you can come in to my office and let me tell you what I think about that. And again, it's up to them, like that person told you, it's up to you what you do with that information from there out.
Right. How are you feeling?
I haven't been sleeping for the past couple of weeks. Lucky to get a couple hours, and then I wake up, and or it takes a while to fall asleep. And I definitely am trying to limit my media and the types of things that I watch. But I would say the beginning of June, it was those first 2 weeks, I cried every day. Just felt heavy, and it was hard to really plug back into life, because it's just, just the heaviness of it all, and all of this stuff coming to light. And just the sadness too. Just feeling like this is where we're at. Yes, this is where we're at, but also, and this is where we're at, and where do we go from here? And so, especially, because we're still in COVID. There's still that COVID thing going on. So like, what is that new normal? And, also things like, I now worry about being outside sometimes right now, because it's so heightened. And in my neighborhood, which is, not as diverse. It's one of the least diverse neighborhoods I've lived in a while, especially in my adult life. But I moved over here to be closer for a job, and I don't feel like I have a lot of community or family around me, and so it's you know it's very real. So I mean, like I talk about having to walk out every day and putting on the armor, but now I really feel like put on the extra armor and wear some of my little prepper gear to guard against myself. I mean, or to guard myself. And what is my plan if something does happen? I didn't even tell you this, but like 2 weeks ago, I was walking Daly one morning, and a couple blocks, a couple blocks away, there's that big old Trump sign on the garage. But no, I wasn't as far over there. But there was a man out, and he was sweeping his front porch, and he just started talking to me. And his name was Aramento. He was an Italian man, and he went out of his way to introduce himself, and he shook my hand, even though we're not supposed to be shaking hands. But I was picking up poop, so didn't matter. Like dirty hand to dirty hand, you're sweeping. Hey, and so it was really, and I think that he, because this was shortly after, all the stuff with George Floyd and the initial popping off of protests and riots and things, but he actually, he told me, he's like, well, I live right here, and if there's anything you need, you just come right here. And he's like, I'm on my name, and he just, again, he's like, you can call me Bud. I'm like, no, I like Aramento. I'm like, my name is Wadooah, and so I've run into him a couple times now, and so we actually talk, and and I will say that that's the other positive thing that I try to think about, is that now, whereas once upon a time walking Daly and being out and about, I do get a little bit more eye contact and a little bit more of a smile from people that once upon a time would look away, or so that so it's surreal. It's surreal. So I don't today tired because I didn't sleep, but I'm okay. Okay. Definitely not at the crying every day, but I think I cried a little bit last night, no, 2 nights ago watching something, but it's just, I don't know. How are you doing? How are you doing? Especially because you have kids, like I, my heart goes out to people with kids right now, and especially kids as great as yours that are just great being citizens of the world, and like this reality. What how are you dealing with them? And
I mean, it's hard because I myself have been such a protester that because of COVID, there have been so many tremendous opportunities to take my kids to their very first protest. With the combination of like the protests themselves and Pride Month. And we have chosen not to because of the potential exposure to COVID and being here in North Carolina with, family that has some health issues. So, I don't know. And, we made choices about where we live for a whole set of reasons that wasn't necessarily about the kind of culture we wanted to raise our kids in. So that's hard. There's part of me that wishes we lived in Brooklyn, or back in Mar Vista, or back in San Francisco, where my kids could just see more, especially someone like Bryn's have a tough time with her stuff that we can talk about a different time. But, I don't know. I don't feel like, I'm not troubled. If anything, we feel a greater sense of responsibility to make sure that our kids are educated, that they are allies, that they are listeners. It's just that where we are, Wadooah, they don't have anybody to listen to, right? Like, want to talk to their friends who have dark skin. they have to call their friends in California. So,
well, I will tell. I mean, because late last week I was invited to speak to this organization called Right Girl, and it's it's an organization that for girls age 13 to 18, for that helps them become better writers, and whether that's creative writing or writing for screen. It's just it's a little community for them. And I was asked, if I could speak to the girls because they're having a special meetup so the girls could talk about their feelings about everything that's going on. And, also because they do these events, more, pretty regularly, but also, it may have been a little bit, can you Black person come and, talk. But I mean, like, and so I had just a couple days, and even that morning I still hadn't, because I'm like, how am I going to talk to these girls? And like, I don't even know how I'm feeling myself. And so I luckily I wasn't, I didn't have to talk at the top of it. So I was able to be in it and just, like they gave the platform. And so some of the girls were able to just express themselves and talk about what they're feeling. And some of them talked about wanting to go to a protest, but, not being able to because of parents or this and that, or some of them, were sad. And I mean, but there were a lot of them were super hopeful. And so I thought about, so I was like, okay, this is Right Girl. Let's do some literature stuff. So I said, at the end of the day, I started talking about Tale of Two Cities, Charles Dickens. I'm like, and I had the quote open, and I said, this is what Charles Dickens wrote, in 1859 about the French Revolution that was 100 years before that. And I said, it's the best of times is the worst of times. It's an age of despair. And so I said, at the end of the day, there's always been a best of times, and I've always been a worst of times. And I was like, in my day, we grew up worrying about nuclear fallout, and like if there was going to be a mushroom cloud, but oh no, Rocky's going to beat the Russians away, and we had the ozone layer, and I'm like, I can't imagine being a kid now and I'm worrying about school shootings, and I'm like, but all that is to say that there's however we lean into it, there's always a best of times and worst of times, and that is the reality of life. And then to the people that are worried that they're not doing enough, because that was a theme too, that they're not doing enough because they're too young and they're having to sit out. I'm like, you asking questions, wanting to talk about these things. I'm like, show up as your authentic self is activism. I'm like, I can tell you that it's taken me a long time in my life to realize that, but me being finally in this place of being comfortable with being a woman, being a Black woman, being a queer Black woman, and just walking into any room in any situation with that and not hiding from me, that I'm making a difference. And so that was really helpful to them to know. And yeah, I got a lot of great feedback on it. But it was just, so, I would say the same thing to you and the kids. I mean, because there aren't other people like you there, we need you there. We need you there to do the work, Pilgrim. We're not pioneers. That's it. You guys are pioneering into this.
Well, I can tell you, because we live in a pretty conservative area, we've made friends with, really nice families, and we don't really talk about politics. We've been really lucky that we did find a great family that he's a minister and she's a social worker, and they totally align. I know you met them when you came out. But I think I don't know, this will something that I've always kind of lived with, and I know we've talked about my faith, and that's something we talk about at a different time, but like my faith is a huge part of who I am. And I think my dad would always say, like, you can inspire God in other people if you live a good life in the light of God, and so so I get that, but again, I just don't think this time is about us as anything other than allies and lifters, and taking our best practices that we've managed to hone for hundreds of years and applying them to other voices, right? So like, I don't think this is about any burdens on us. It's more about like, you know, we have more responsibility to take than we ever have before.
Oh, we're saying the same thing. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I'm not saying it's a burden. I'm saying that's your job. It's not easy to be in those rooms and in those spaces where you have people look at you like you've got three heads. You got to be willing to be the person in the room where you have the three heads and be proud of those three heads. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying activism is. It's like, let that, you think I'm a freak? Well, my freak flag is flying right now. So look at me.
Totally.
You know, and just be in people's faces, you know, and that's, I mean, and you know, not in an aggressive way, but you know,
the signs that we keep putting in our front yard that got
exactly,
stolen.
exactly. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Don't bow down to the pressure of conforming to make it all pretty and neat and play nicely and color inside the lines. No, the activism is nope. Keep planting that new sign back up on the front porch. I mean, like even, you know, you were saying, I forget which one of the kids, you know, actually was calling out some of their, you know, their schoolmates about some things that they're saying. That is exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, you mean during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings when the 8th grade boys were talking about how women will accuse men of rape if they're mad at them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or want money from them?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, I got a feminist, so like
a feminist.
That did not work.
Well, I think you've also told me about, you know, kids. There's using the N-word or talking about gay people, and you know, your kids are activists, and so that's what I'm saying. Like,
totally. Totally.
Yeah, feminists, you know, like crush them. Let them know that there's, you know, there's not that safe space. I can't say. I mean, like we'll talk about this in another one, but my VR learnings about. I learned so. In fact, I've decided I'm going to make I'm going to do a show about that. Just about that being incognito in VR poker.
Yeah, I remember. Do you remember Keely at So Keely, I remember told me the story because you know he's Jewish, but he doesn't look Jewish in the sense that he's got the blonde curly hair and blue eyes, and you know he I don't know was in college maybe, and his friends were talking shit about Jewish people, not thinking that he was one of them, you know. So, and I mean, and that shit goes down, and they're all the same color,
right? Well, that's what you know. Like I said, it's about nope. Those conversations are not okay. Make the racists okay, you know, whatever. Afraid again. Like no, you know, this is not for normal. You know, for society, and that was, you know, one of the powerful things coming out of being a part of Sunday's protest. I mean, like especially seeing a lot of the coverage with the thugs and the, you know, rooters and the is seeing all the different people. And just, you know, I think there is for so many more people that willingness to want things to change. I think even I saw a YouTube video where some guy in New York who wasn't wearing a mask, and on top of it, he was giving the coffee shop people a hard time about the Black Lives Matter sign. And he's like, all lives matter. And the people outside of the coffee shop were filming him and were like telling him to move on and take his racist ass, you know, and trying to help the coffee shop people. And the people weren't just brown and black people, you know. So I appreciate that. Anyway, before we wind down, you know, like you had said something else about like just going back to our podcast in general, because we can continue to talk about this till the cows come home. Yes, but and we will. I like how you were, you know, you were thinking about how you describe our point of view.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what you will see more of in this podcast, but.
Yes, let us tease future podcasts.
Yes. Well, and also, you said, I mean, like, I think one of the things in the point of view you mentioned was that we're exactly different. You know, we started off with that, and we spent a lot of time this episode talking about different race, religion, sexual orientation, in identity, but being aligned in spirit. But we're also serious nerds, so watch out. So whether that's sci-fi, Star Trek, Star Wars, and filmmaking, and
oh God, we have so much to talk about. We have Picard, we have Discovery, we have so much to talk about. Oh,
culture and tech. But tell me about winning. Because we've toyed around with that win before, but yeah.
Wadooah and Quinn.
Winning.
With two ends.
With two ends, and the fact that people work closely with us could easily confuse us with one another. Believe it or not, it has happened.
It's true. They call me Wadooah. They call you Quinn, which was why we ironically dressed up as each other for Halloween.
And won.
Awesome. Yeah. And won the contest. Yeah. That was awesome. And I especially liked it because I just basically didn't talk for a day, and I could be Wadooah. And you could be super chatty for a day.
I walked in the room, what's up, everybody? How you doing? I was tired by the end of the day.
And I just had because remember we were walking down the street in San Francisco and we walked by the wig shop? And I think we both saw the short blonde wig that was styled just like my hair, and we just kind of went.
And then we saw the one with locks. Yeah, with the locks too. We're like, oh yeah, and we did. We totally brought them back from San Francisco down to LA for that.
Awesome, dude. Oh my God, that hurts my face to think about.
Oh my God, so yeah. Well, I'll pull up that picture for another time because I have it on my fridge. But then the last one is the Aqua Leo.
Yes. Every successful relationship in my life has been with an Aquarian, and I am a Leo. So I am married to an Aquarian. The two most successful work relationships I've had were you and Frankie, both Aquarians.
I think we have the same birthday even.
Yeah, she 26th. So,
oh, okay. 2 days apart, but close enough.
2 days apart, or the 27th. Sorry, Frankie. And so I think we can talk about that.
Yes, and totally. Because that'll fall into our geeking, our nerd alert. Because we're aligned spiritually, and we can geek out on that stuff. And so there is something to be said about being opposite signs, but what they say about opposites attracting. So, and Aquarius and Leo are exactly opposite of each other, 6 months. So, anyway, yeah. So so stay tuned for more of that goodness. And then, did you want to tease some?
Yeah. Also, I was thinking because we do geek out on a lot of the same things, that our goal is to have some great guests on.
Yes.
That are in our lane of geekage. So,
and just fandom.
On that.
And geek out in the fan love, for sure. And so we'll come back to that. But you were saying teasing out some episodes.
Oh yeah. Well, we definitely need to talk about death.
Yes,
that's important. We'll have the death episode. Not in the terrible thanks for asking lane, which is amazing. And that podcast got me through so much of my grief. Thank you, Nora. But I think that, and then you had a couple great ones too, a couple I didn't even recognize the names of.
Oh yeah, I was talking about Reference Man. We did both. We want to do something about Scientology. Neither one of us are Scientologists.
Yes. I can talk about my Tom Cruise obsession. Yes.
And so much more. Of course, now I can't even think about what was on that list. But so stay tuned. But thank you so much for watching Conversations from the Compound, for hanging in there with us. If you like stuff or have comments, be able to comment below when we publish this thing. So whenever you watch, have a good day. But if if it is next June, happy Juneteenth next year. But thank you, Quinn, for we finally did it. Let's give ourselves a pat.
Yay!
conversation, and we're live, and we're born, and we'll be back with more conversations from the compound. Until then, I have been Wadooah Wali, aka Dub Dub.
And I am Quintastic, also known as Lineage Quinn.
Quintabulous, and we'll talk to you, or well, I'll talk to you sooner. We'll see you guys another time.
Bye.